You know, there are moments in politics when you witness something so unprecedented, so shocking, that it changes your understanding of what's possible in American government. What happened 3 days ago in the Pentagon's most secure briefing room isn't just another Trump controversy. It's a breakdown of military civilian relations that should terrify anyone who understands how our democracy is supposed to function. And here's what nobody's reporting: Trump wasn't just asked to leave that meeting, he was physically escorted out by military police after a confrontation with Admiral Rebecca Hayes that escalated into something I've never seen in my decades of public service. But the real story isn't what happened in that room, it's why it happened and what it reveals about Trump's relationship with military leadership that could reshape everything we know about civilian control of the armed forces. Let me tell you about Admiral Rebecca Hayes, because understanding her makes what happened even more extraordinary. This isn't some political appointee or desk-bound bureaucrat. Hayes is a 30-year Navy veteran, submarine commander, the first woman to captain a nuclear submarine, and someone who spent her entire career avoiding politics and focusing on national security. She's known in Pentagon circles as the Iron Lady. Not because she's harsh, but because she's absolutely uncompromising when it comes to military integrity and constitutional principles. The meeting was supposed to be routine. Trump, as a former president, still receives certain classified briefings as a courtesy and constitutional tradition. These briefings usually last about 30 minutes, cover broad strategic issues, and involve minimal interaction beyond questions for clarification. Former presidents typically treat these sessions with the gravity and respect they deserve, but Trump, as we've learned over and over, isn't typical. According to sources who were in that room, things went wrong almost immediately. The briefing was about ongoing military operations in the South China Sea, involving sensitive intelligence about Chinese naval movements and American response strategies. About 10 minutes in, Trump interrupted Admiral Hayes to suggest that she was deliberately holding back information and demanded to see classified materials that weren't part of the standard briefing protocol. Here's where you need to understand something crucial about military protocol. There are specific procedures for handling classified information, even with former presidents. Admiral Hayes couldn't just hand over additional classified materials because Trump demanded them. She explained this professionally and respectfully, but Trump took it as a personal insult and a sign of disrespect. "You work for me," Trump reportedly told her, his voice rising. "I was your commander-in-chief, and you will show me the respect I deserve." Admiral Hayes calmly reminded him that he was no longer president and that she worked for the American people through the current chain of command. That's when things got ugly. According to sources, Trump stood up abruptly, pointed his finger directly at Admiral Hayes, and said something that shocked everyone in the room. "You people in the military think you're so special, but you're just government employees like everyone else. I know how to deal with disloyal employees." The silence that followed was deafening. Career military officers don't get threatened by civilians, especially not by former presidents who should understand the separation between political power and military service. Admiral Hayes, according to witnesses, maintained her composure but made it clear that the meeting was over. But Trump wasn't done. As Admiral Hayes began collecting her materials, he made a comment that crossed every line of military protocol and basic decency. "Maybe if the Navy had better female leadership, we wouldn't have so many problems in the Pacific. Women shouldn't be making decisions about war." That's when Admiral Hayes did something unprecedented. She stopped packing her materials, looked Trump directly in the eye, and said words that are now reverberating through every Pentagon corridor. "Sir, I've dedicated my life to defending the Constitution you swore to uphold. Your comments are not only inappropriate, they're unpatriotic. This briefing is terminated." According to sources who witnessed the exchange, Trump's face turned red with rage. He started shouting about insubordination and military coups, demanding that Admiral Hayes be court-martialed for disrespect. He refused to leave the briefing room when she asked him to, insisting that he had every right to be there and that no one could make him leave. That's when the most extraordinary part of this story happened. Admiral Hayes activated a security protocol that I didn't even know existed. She called for military police to escort a former president out of a Pentagon briefing room for disruptive behavior and refusal to comply with security procedures. 2 military police officers entered the room and, according to sources, very professionally, but firmly informed Trump that he needed to leave immediately. Trump initially refused, demanding to speak to someone in charge, and insisting that Admiral Hayes had no authority over him. The MPs explained that in secure Pentagon facilities, military commanders have absolute authority over security protocols. The image of a former president being escorted out of a Pentagon briefing room by military police is something that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. But here we are, watching the breakdown of norms and procedures that have governed American civil-military relations for decades. The immediate aftermath has been chaos inside Pentagon leadership. According to defense sources, Admiral Hayes filed a formal incident report detailing Trump's behavior, his inappropriate comments about female military leadership, and his refusal to comply with security protocols. This report is now circulating among senior military leaders and has reportedly reached the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But here's what should worry every American. This isn't an isolated incident. Sources within the Pentagon tell me that Trump's interactions with military leadership during these briefings have been increasingly hostile and erratic over the past several months. He's questioned operational decisions he's not entitled to influence, demanded information beyond his clearance level, and made inappropriate comments about active duty personnel. The legal implications of this incident are staggering. Former presidents receive classified briefings as a courtesy, not as a constitutional right. That access can be revoked if they demonstrate inability to handle classified information appropriately or if they pose security risks. Trump's behavior in this briefing could trigger a formal review of his clearance status. Congressional oversight committees are already asking questions about the incident. Several senators with military backgrounds have privately expressed concern about any former president threatening or intimidating active duty military personnel. There are discussions about whether formal hearings might be necessary to address the breakdown in civil military protocols. The psychological profile emerging from this incident is deeply troubling. Mental health professionals who have observed Trump's behavior patterns suggest that his confrontation with Admiral Hayes reveals increasing inability to accept authority or limitations on his power. This kind of behavior toward military leadership could be extremely dangerous if he returns to office. International implications are also significant. Foreign intelligence services closely monitor interactions between American political figures and military leaders. Evidence of dysfunction or hostility between former presidents and military commanders could affect how allies and adversaries assess American political stability and military effectiveness. The incident has also highlighted broader concerns about Trump's relationship with military protocol and tradition. Throughout his presidency, he often clashed with military leaders who tried to maintain institutional independence and constitutional boundaries. This briefing room confrontation suggests those tensions have only intensified since he left office. Admiral Hayes, for her part, has become something of a hero within Pentagon circles. Career military officers are quietly expressing admiration for her willingness to stand up to inappropriate behavior from a former commander-in-chief. Her response is being seen as a defense of military professionalism and institutional integrity. The broader question raised by this incident is whether Trump understands or respects the constitutional boundaries that separate civilian political power from military authority. His demand that Admiral Hayes show him respect and his threats about dealing with disloyal employees suggest a fundamental misunderstanding of how democratic governance works. Looking ahead, this incident could affect Trump's relationship with military voters, who have traditionally supported him. Many service members and veterans value military professionalism and respect for chain of command. Seeing a former president threaten and insult a decorated female admiral could damage his standing with this crucial constituency. The precedent being set here is also dangerous for future civil-military relations. If former presidents believe they can intimidate or threaten military leaders during classified briefings, it undermines the professionalism and independence that our military requires to function effectively. Security protocols around former president briefings are now being reviewed and potentially strengthened to prevent similar incidents. This could include additional personnel, modified procedures, or even restrictions on which former officials receive ongoing briefings. The story of Trump's ejection from the Pentagon briefing room is still developing, but its implications are already clear. When a former president has to be escorted out of a military facility by police because of inappropriate behavior toward military leaders, it signals a breakdown in democratic norms that should concern every American. Admiral Hayes stood up for military professionalism, constitutional principles, and basic respect for service members. Her courage in confronting inappropriate behavior from a former president may have prevented an even worse incident and sent a clear message about the boundaries that protect our military from political interference. The question now is whether Trump will face any consequences for his behavior, or whether this incident will be dismissed as another example of his unconventional style. How we answer that question will determine whether similar confrontations become normalized or whether military leaders can continue to serve with the dignity and respect their service deserves. What happened in that Pentagon briefing room 3 days ago was more than just a tense exchange. It was a test of whether our constitutional system can still enforce the boundaries that keep democracy functioning. Admiral Hayes passed that test. The question is whether the rest of our political system will follow her example.